freezing night. A father with nothing but his little girl and a worn blanket. Beside him, a leather-clad biker collapses in the gutter. No one stops, except the homeless man. He lifts the stranger from the dirt, never knowing tomorrow the streets would thunder with 300 motorcycles. Before we start into today's story, let us know in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? And if our stories touch your heart, please subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us reach our first 1,000 subscribers and bring you more inspiring stories every day. The city didn't notice men like Michael Rowan anymore. He was just another shadow on a bench, another face weathered by wind and hunger. Once he had a wife, a modest home, and a steady job fixing cars. But after his wife's sudden illness and mounting hospital bills, life spun out of control. She passed within a year, and grief hollowed him out. Unable to pay rent, Michael and his 8-year-old daughter, Emily, found themselves living in shelters, sometimes under bridges. Every night, Michael would whisper promises that things would get better. Emily's small hand always clutched his arm in trust. He worked odd jobs, collected bottles, even skipped meals to save for her. Yet, in the city's rhythm, they remained invisible. Strangers hurried past without a glance. Still, Michael carried himself with a quiet dignity. His back straight, his daughter fed first. He had nothing, but he still had his honor, and he still had Emily. Michael's mornings always began the same. Waking Emily before dawn, brushing her hair with his cracked hands, and walking her to school. He made sure no one suspected she was homeless. He cleaned her clothes in public restrooms, drying them overnight under bridges with cardboard walls. Emily never complained. She smiled, telling her dad she loved her peanut butter sandwiches, even if it was the only meal they shared. Teachers noticed her politeness but never guessed her situation. After school, Michael would scour construction sites for scrap metal, trade them for coins, then buy Emily her favorite apple slices. Nights were the hardest. The cold crept in, and Emily often shivered against him. Still, Michael whispered stories about knights, bravery, and kingdoms where even the poor were cherished. His voice was soft, and though his stomach was empty, he carried hope in every word. For Emily, he was still her hero. For Michael, survival wasn't for himself anymore. It was for her. On one bitter evening, the streets echoed with drunken laughter. A group of leather-clad bikers stormed into a corner bar near the alley Michael called home. Their jackets bore the symbol of the Hells Angels. Among them was a man named Marcus Razor Kane, tall and broad, with a reputation that sent ripples of fear across the city. That night, however, Razor staggered from the bar, clearly intoxicated. He shouted at shadows, his voice echoing against brick walls, before stumbling and collapsing into the gutter. His head struck the curb, leaving him bleeding and unconscious. Passers-by averted their eyes, avoiding trouble. Cars rolled past. Michael froze at first, clutching Emily close. He knew the danger. These men weren't the type to forgive strangers meddling in their affairs. Yet, as Razor's breath rattled and his body trembled, Michael made a choice. Emily's eyes looked at him with worry, and Michael knew. Human decency mattered more than fear. Michael pulled Emily aside, whispering to her, "Stay here, sweetheart. Daddy will be right back." He removed his worn jacket and rushed to the biker. Kneeling in the grime, he lifted Razor's head gently. Blood trickled down his temple, and his breathing was shallow. "Stay with me, man," Michael urged. A crowd gathered, whispering, but no one intervened. Razor groaned, muttering incoherently. Michael pressed his sleeve against the wound, shouting for someone to call an ambulance. A woman shook her head, saying, "He's a Hell's Angel. Best to leave him." But Michael refused. "He's a human being," he snapped. Minutes later, paramedics arrived, surprised to find a homeless man cradling the infamous biker. They rushed Razor onto a stretcher. As the ambulance sped away, Michael returned to Emily. She asked, "Daddy, will he be okay?" Michael kissed her forehead. "I hope so, baby. We did the right thing." Neither of them imagined how much that moment would change everything. The next morning, Michael and Emily were huddled near a soup kitchen, waiting in line for bread. The air buzzed differently. Whispers traveled down the block. Rumors that a Hell's Angel had been found nearly dead, but saved by a homeless man. Michael lowered his eyes, hoping no one connected it to him. By noon, the low growl of engines rolled into the neighborhood. Dozens of Harley-Davidsons thundered in formation, chrome flashing under the winter sun. The crowd parted nervously as black-jacketed bikers filled the street. Michael stiffened, pulling Emily behind him. His heart pounded. Had they come for revenge, believing he'd harmed Razor? The lead rider killed his engine and dismounted. A heavy silence followed. Then, from behind the line of motorcycles, emerged Marcus Razor Kane himself. His head bandaged, eyes sharp. He looked directly at Michael. The air thickened. Michael held Emily's hand tighter, bracing for whatever storm was about to unfold. Razor walked forward slowly, every step heavy with the weight of silence. People gasped, retreating into doorways. Michael's throat tightened. Emily squeezed his hand, whispering, "Daddy?" Razor stopped just feet away. His weathered face studied Michael, this fragile, homeless man with a little girl hiding behind him. Then Razor's gravelly voice broke the silence. "You!" He jabbed a finger at Michael. "You the one who pulled me out of the gutter last night?" Michael hesitated but nodded. "Yeah, I wasn't gonna leave you there." Razor's jaw clenched, and for a moment, Michael thought fists would fly. Then Razor did the unthinkable. He removed his leather vest, the emblem of the Hell's Angels gleaming on its back, and draped it over Michael's shoulders. "You saved my life when no one else would," Razor said. "That makes you family." Behind him, nearly 300 bikers roared their approval, the sound echoing like thunder across the city. Michael stood frozen, the heavy leather vest pressing on his shoulders like a crown he never asked for. Around him, people whispered in disbelief. Emily peeked from behind her father, her wide eyes reflecting the gleam of chrome and sunlight. Razor stepped closer, his voice softer now. "Most folks would have walked away. You didn't. You looked at me like a man, not a monster." His words broke the tension, and murmurs rippled through the crowd. Michael swallowed hard. I couldn't let a man die in the street. My little girl was watching. I needed her to know compassion matters." Razor's expression shifted, toughness melting into something Michael never expected. "Respect." He nodded once. "You taught me something last night." Razor turned to his brothers. "This man ain't invisible anymore. He's one of us." Engines roared again, and for the first time in years, Michael felt the weight of being seen. Truly seen. The bikers surrounded Michael and Emily, not with menace but protection. One rider knelt, offering Emily a teddy bear patched with motorcycle logos. She hugged it instantly, her smile trembling with disbelief. Razor crouched eye level with Michael. "Where you stayin'?" he asked. Michael's silence said enough. Razor's gaze hardened, scanning the cracked sidewalk, the worn blanket folded in Michael's pack. "That ain't right," Razor muttered. Turning to his men, he barked, "Nobody sleeps cold in this city while we got wheels." Within minutes, riders formed a convoy. Michael and Emily were guided to the center as engines ignited again. The thunder carried them away from alleys of despair and into streets now trembling under their presence. Emily clung to her dad as they rode in the sidecar of Razor's bike. Tears stung Michael's eyes, not from wind, but from the feeling he had forgotten existed. Safety. For once, his little girl wasn't invisible. They arrived at a biker-owned garage on the edge of town. Walls covered in graffiti and chrome reflected a rough beauty. Inside, long tables lined with food waited. Emily's face lit up at the sight of hot soup, bread, and fresh fruit. She ate with quiet joy, while Michael hesitated, uncomfortable with so much generosity. Razor watched him. "Sit, brother. Eat." Michael finally relented, spoon trembling as he lifted broth to his lips. Every bite felt surreal. Razor leaned in, his tone low. "You didn't just save me. You saved my patch, my dignity. If word spread that Razor Kane passed out drunk in a gutter, I'd have lost everything. You carried me when I couldn't stand." Michael shook his head. "I didn't do it for thanks. I did it for my daughter. I wanted her to see the right thing." Razor's eyes softened. "She did. And so did we." As night fell, Razor called a meeting. The garage filled with the roar of voices and the smell of oil and leather. Michael stood awkwardly at the edge, Emily asleep in his arms. Razor raised his hand, silencing the crowd. "Brothers, last night I was nothing but disgrace. This man," he pointed at Michael, "a father with nothing but his little girl, lifted me out of it. When the world turned its back, he didn't. That makes him more of a brother than most." A biker shouted, "What's his name?" Razor looked at Michael, who cleared his throat. "Michael. Michael Rowan." Razor nodded firmly. "From now on, Michael Rowan rides with us. And no one, no landlord, no thug, no cold night, touches him or his daughter." The room erupted in cheers. Michael's heart pounded. He wasn't just a nameless man anymore. He was Michael Rowan, and he was family to 300 riders. For the first time in months, Michael and Emily slept on mattresses inside the garage's loft. Emily curled into blankets, whispering, "Daddy, it feels like home." Michael watched her, eyes wet with gratitude. Downstairs, the bikers drank, laughed, and played pool, their voices echoing like a strange lullaby. In the morning, Michael awoke to find a brand new denim jacket laid beside him. On the back, embroidered words read, "Brotherhood isn't blood." Emily had her own, tiny, pink-stitched with wings. She twirled, giggling. Michael tried to refuse. "I can't take this. I've got nothing to give back." Razor placed a hand on his shoulder. "You already gave, brother. You gave me my life." Michael lowered his head, overwhelmed. He had lived invisible for years, but now 300 men wore his name like a badge of honor. And Emily, his little girl, wasn't just the daughter of a homeless man anymore. She was family to an army. Word spread fast. Shopkeepers who once ignored Michael now greeted him nervously, their eyes darting toward the roaring motorcycles often parked outside. Suddenly, he wasn't invisible, he was protected. One evening, a landlord who had evicted Michael months ago crossed paths with him. Sneering, he muttered, "Guess you found yourself some troublemakers." Razor stepped forward, towering over the man. "This troublemaker has more honor than you'll ever know. You left a kid freezing on the street." The landlord stammered, retreating under the weight of Razor's glare. Michael didn't gloat. He simply held Emily's hand, letting silence speak louder than any victory. For him, it wasn't about power. It was about finally having dignity. Emily looked up at him, whispering, "Daddy, people see us now." Michael smiled softly. "That's all I ever wanted, baby. For the world to see you." And for the first time, she believed it. One snowy afternoon, Michael found Razor sitting alone in the garage, staring at his patched vest. The usual fire in Razor's eyes was gone. "You know," Razor said quietly, "I wasn't just drunk that night. I was ready to let it all go. Years of fighting, mistakes, losing brothers. I felt worthless." He looked at Michael. "But you gave me a reason to stand up again." Michael sat beside him. "Funny, because I felt worthless too. Losing my wife, my home, everything. Some nights I wanted to give up. But I had Emily. And saving you, maybe it was saving myself too." Razor's jaw tightened, but his eyes shone. "You're not just family now. You're a reminder. Even the strongest of us need saving sometimes." Silence hung heavy, but it wasn't emptiness. It was truth. Two broken men had pulled each other from the edge, and both were still standing. Emily thrived in her new reality. Bikers escorted her to school, their engines growling like loyal guardians. Teachers whispered, unsure how to respond when a girl once arriving in tattered clothes now had 300 uncles waiting outside. She giggled, hugging their leather jackets before running in with her backpack bouncing. Michael found odd jobs through the bikers, fixing engines, sweeping garages, repairing pipes. Each day he built something he hadn't felt in years: stability. One evening, as Emily colored at a table, Razor handed Michael an envelope. Inside was cash, more than Michael had ever seen since his wife's passing. Michael shook his head. "I can't accept this." Razor growled, "It's not charity, it's pay. You fix bikes, you work hard. You earned it." Michael exhaled, relief flooding him. For the first time, he could imagine more than survival. He could imagine a future. And Emily, she could imagine childhood. The story of the homeless dad who saved a Hell's Angel spread beyond the city. Local papers picked it up, headlines painting Michael as a symbol of compassion. Reporters sought interviews, but Michael remained humble. "I'm just a dad who couldn't walk away." Emily giggled as cameras snapped her picture, clutching her teddy bear. One afternoon, Razor stood beside Michael as journalists crowded. A reporter asked Razor, "Why protect him?" Razor's answer was blunt. "Because in a world full of people too busy to care, he stopped. He lifted me up when I was dirt. That's what brotherhood looks like." The crowd fell silent. Michael wasn't just surviving anymore. He was inspiring strangers who had never known his name. But fame didn't matter to him. At night, when Emily slept safe and warm, Michael whispered prayers of thanks. Not for the attention, not for the protection, but for the simple truth. They had a home again. Tension returned weeks later. A rival gang confronted the Angels outside a diner, mocking Razor for being saved by a bum. Razor's fists tightened, rage flashing in his eyes. But before violence erupted, Michael stepped forward. His voice trembled but held firm. "Call me what you want. But the night I picked him up, I didn't see a gang leader. I saw a man bleeding in the street. And I'd do it again. That's not weakness. That's strength." Silence followed. Even the rival gang shifted uneasily, caught off guard by Michael's words. Razor smirked, clapping Michael's back. "That's my brother. Speak your piece." The rivals, unable to match the weight of dignity in Michael's voice, left without a fight. Later, Razor told him, "You don't need fists to lead men. You already lead with something stronger." Michael didn't reply. He just looked at Emily, knowing she had seen everything, and that was enough. Winter deepened, but Michael's world no longer felt cold. With the bikers' help, he secured a small apartment. It wasn't grand, 2 rooms, peeling wallpaper and second-hand furniture. But to Emily it was a castle. She ran from corner to corner, laughing, while Michael watched, tears streaking his cheeks. That night they ate spaghetti together on the floor. Emily declared, "This is the best dinner ever." Michael chuckled, savoring the moment. Later, Razor and a few bikers visited, carrying a brand new bed for Emily. She squealed, bouncing onto the mattress. Razor grinned. "Every princess needs her throne." Michael clasped his hand. "I don't know how to thank you." Razor shook his head. "You already did, brother. You reminded me what matters." For Michael, the cracked walls didn't matter. The world had turned once dark streets into a sanctuary, and his daughter finally had more than promises. She had a future. Months later, Michael stood outside Emily's school, waiting with Razor. Children filed out, but Emily's eyes found only her dad. She sprinted into his arms, giggling. Razor watched quietly, then murmured, "She's got your strength." Michael smiled, holding her close. No, she's my strength. They walked home together, passing shopkeepers who now greeted them warmly. Michael carried groceries in his arms, bought with money he had earned fixing bikes. Emily skipped beside him, her laughter rising like music. Life wasn't perfect, but it was real, and it was theirs. Razor lit a cigarette, staring at the sky. Funny, huh? A homeless man saved a biker, and now 300 bikers owe him their lives. Michael shook his head. No one owes me. Just pass it forward. That's all I ask. Razor nodded, the weight of his words sinking deep. Brotherhood wasn't about patches, it was about humanity. On the anniversary of his wife's passing, Michael visited the small cemetery with Emily and a convoy of bikers trailing behind. The rumble of engines softened as they stopped. Michael knelt by the gravestone, placing fresh flowers. Emily hugged his arm. Razor stood back, giving him silence. Michael whispered, I promised you I'd take care of her. I'm still trying. Emily looked at the stone. Mommy, we're not cold anymore. Michael kissed her forehead, his chest tightening. As they left, Razor placed a hand on his shoulder. She'd be proud of you, brother. Michael's eyes glistened. Maybe, but I'm proud of her. For keeping me alive when I didn't want to be. The bikers rode slow that day, engines humming like a hymn. For Michael, grief remained, but so did strength. Love hadn't left. It had simply grown an army around them. Years later, Michael sat outside his apartment, fixing a bike engine with Emily, now a teenager, laughing as grease stained her hands. Razor, older and grayer, watched proudly from his bike. Life had reshaped itself, not into riches, but into something far more precious. Belonging. The streets that once swallowed Michael now echoed with the sound of allies who never forgot him. Emily leaned her head on her father's shoulder. Daddy, you really are a knight. Michael smiled softly. No, sweetheart, just a man who didn't walk away. Razor revved his engine, raising his fist, and 300 motorcycles answered in thunder. Michael closed his eyes, letting the sound wash over him. He had lost everything once, but by saving one life, he found family, dignity, and hope. In a world that once ignored him, Michael Rowan was no longer invisible. He was unbreakable. Sometimes the smallest act of compassion can awaken an army. Michael didn't save Razor for glory, he did it for love. And in return, life gave him back more than he lost. If this story touched your heart, like, subscribe, and press the bell icon for more inspiring stories.